following content contains stories and information that some may find triggering. We recommend anyone under the age of 21 watch these chapters with adult supervision due to the sensitive subject matter. All persons in this podcast speak from experience and are not trained doctors or therapists, but simply those who wish to share their knowledge for others to use. Please be aware before continuing on watching and listening to this episode. Thank you.
Hi, welcome back to Paolo's podcast. We have Brenda Easter in our third chapter. Brenda Easter is going to finish her story, and we're going to be starting with the subject matter of your own self-care that you were using through the process and probably through the sad ending, and then some coping skills. So I'll let you take it from there, Brenda.
All right. Well, it's never easy to lose a loved one, be it your mom, your grandma, your dad, your aunt. It's tough. But when you lose a child, it tears a little piece of your heart out. And I don't know if you ever really get it back. However, I think I was probably a little blessed in the fact that Zach left, a detailed letter. He was sincerely sorry. And I think anybody who takes their life truly are. They just feel like, they just can't continue. And I don't think anybody should judge that. I think you have to realize that everybody has their breaking point, and you never know when or where, when that might be. So I think kindness and compassion is probably some of the most important aspects of dealing with losing a loved one. And of course, the shock, the pain, unbearable pain, everything was so surreal. Did this really just happen? And living in a fog for, quite a while, because I just didn't understand. And I was lucky. Zach left us a lot of information. And Zach left us a letter, telling us he loved us, telling us that he was sorry, but he really wanted his brain donated for Science for Good. He gave us purpose. And I think no matter who you are, what your situation is, whether you are blessed with that kind of an exit or not, it doesn't matter. Everyone's going to go through grief. There are several steps that you take, and you don't rush through those steps.
Was that very helpful? I don't know if helpful is the right word, but I was watching a podcast, and it was a comedian that committed suicide, and the host of the podcast was saying, I just wish I was a fly on the wall the last 10 minutes to knew what was going through their head. Would I have done something? So somebody that's rationally thinking like myself, and again, I'm not advocating suicide for anybody. I would love for everybody to take professional help, communicate, share, reach out for every resource, because once it's done, it's something we can't take back. So, and there is collateral damage, whether we like it or not. But was that very helpful to you that he wrote those letters to you, that he did that? Would it have changed the circumstances or anything like that? And I'm just trying to say if...
I think the answer to that is yes and no. Was it really helpful to us? Yes. Was it really helpful to us? No. And the reason is it's loss. The person that you love is gone. And whether you like it or not, you're going to go through all the stages of grief. And we all do it. There's no way of getting around this. And, it comes at different times. My two other boys and my husband and I, we all felt that loss and we're grieving, but none of us really went through the process at the same time. And some were in the angry stage a lot longer than some of the others. But in the end, it was everybody having enough respect to realize what they were going through and not judging and not trying to tell them how they should feel, because you can't unless you're doing it, unless you are experiencing it.
That's a very important note. And I think that's a very hard skill, especially probably more so as a mom. You want to help your other two boys go through. And maybe is that a good advice? It's just, you just gotta let it come.
From a parent's perspective, I mean, I had two choices. One was to follow pieces. And God knows that's what I wanted to do. But I couldn't, because I had other loved ones around me, and that included my two other boys and my husband, and my mom and my dad, his grandparents, and my brothers and my sisters and my nieces and my nephews.
What about the parents that don't have a large family and support system? Do you have any advice for them? Like one woman she's after the suicide, she got divorced and she was ostracized by her family because they thought they could have done more and this and that. And I feel so bad for her. And she reaches out to me for help. And I don't have that answers because I haven't lived through, but thankfully I haven't lived through your crisis.
I truly believe in my heart, everybody has a support system. Sometimes it's your immediate family. Sometimes it's good friends. Heck, I found some of my best support from people I never met before. Some of them had gone through what I was going through, and some of them were just kind. And as someone goes through this process, kindness is one of the best gifts that you can give, and not judging, because you know what? You don't know how they're feeling, and you don't know where in this process they are and how much guilt they may have. It's so easy to say, what could I have done different? Why Zach? And I did ask that question a lot. Why Zach? There's a lot of people out there that have played these sports. Why Zach? There's a lot of families who are asking that very same question, and we're never going to find those answers. We're never going to find those answers. But support systems can come in professional help. If psychiatry, you can go through counseling, grief counseling. And, I did go through grief counseling for a bit, to try to, kind of help me be strong for my boys and my family, and also to give myself, I guess, the approval that it was okay for me to grieve too. While I was strong, it was okay for me to grieve. I realized I couldn't do it for everybody. As much as I wanted to take their pain away, I couldn't. As much as I wanted mine to go away, it wasn't going to.
Do you have any recommendations or suggestions for someone that's going through a crisis that you and other parents are going through, how to pick the right psychologist or the right grief counselor, personality traits, male, female, anything that's, I don't know.
What? It is such a personal thing by virtue of who I am and my personality. I have no problems talking to anybody generally, but I think what's really important is finding a counselor who has dealt or has experience dealing with the type of loss that you're dealing with, be it suicide, be it, your son dying or a daughter in a car accident. They're the same, but they're different. And I think finding a counselor who's got, the kind of experience in dealing with kind of the situation that you're dealing with. And then the other part of that is finding someone that you feel comfortable talking to, and, really telling them how you feel. Because what I found out, most of us don't like to talk about how we're feeling. It's terrible, and yet enlightening at the same time. And it's almost like telling someone who's not going to judge you like you might feel with some of your support people, because those people don't judge. They're kind, they're tender, they're great listeners, and they sincerely want to help you find the right tools and tactics for you to heal. And that's what it takes, is time and the right skill, ability to cope, to move forward. And sometimes you just have to give your self permission. If you don't feel like getting out of bed, don't. But you don't get to do that every day.
Because then we got to be careful. You can fall into isolation and depression, and then the disease keeps manifesting. Right.
You're following into the same situation, and you have a good reason, but you get to do that for a day, but you don't get to do that for a month.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a healthy balance.
It's about the healthy balance. For me personally, being able to kind of have that reinforcement, yes, you're doing the right things. You might try this, giving me some suggestions on how to manage, relationships with my boys and husband and family and, work, all those things. And, realizing that when people come up to me and give me a hug, it's because they're being kind. They're not, they don't want me to relive this any longer than I have to, but it was equally what was important for me to understand was it was equally important for them to give me that hug as it was for me to receive it. Right. And so you have to realize that, everybody's a little different. And then I think what's super important is finding your purpose. And I say this all day long. What really gets you out of bed and moving is to find your purpose.
Amen.
And I don't know, I can't define that for everyone. I can tell you, for me, it was Zach's last wishes. He basically defined what we needed to do and the reason we started CTE Hope in the first place. He knew that we needed to prevent and protect our athletes somehow. He knew that we needed to improve and increase awareness about the dangers of concussions if they aren't healed properly. And he knew that we needed to support those who were suffering and their families. And so those are the three major pillars. We have a fourth pillar as well, but these are the three that I focus on most, because these are the ones, and we get a lot of calls, I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of private messages off Facebook, people that find me, and I do my best to help them. But finding purpose in your life, and that can be like me starting a foundation to prevent CTE, to support those who are suffering, and to increase awareness. It can be about you who has an aging relative or an aging neighbor who needs you desperately, and you find the time and your purpose to help them. Whatever that situation can be, it's your purpose.
And people have to realize you don't have to do, because they don't know what goes into all the work that we're doing as a not-for-profit. It's, to me, being a former entrepreneur and startup companies, when I took on this challenge, I was like, what am I doing? This is totally unhealthy. I'm draining my brain, whatever it is, where I should be shutting down, relax, and take care of myself. But my doctor said I needed purpose. And he didn't want me to go this big. So, but I would say that, they don't have to, the purpose doesn't mean that they have to go as deep as we're going. They could volunteer for your CTE Hope. There's ways to give back to the community and do that. So they don't have to go extreme as we're going. But when you said, I forgot what I call them mission statements. But one of your thoughts is also too, it kept, by doing this, it also keeps the legacy of Zach alive, and he never dies, and he's passing on so much besides protecting other athletes. I'm sure he keeps you in a happy thought too. And even though it's a sad story, right?
Yeah. I think that's another one of the coping skills. I think you have two choices. Many families fall apart when you lose like this. But we chose the opposite, and that was to come together, to band together, to stay together and support one another. And so we spent a lot of time together, and still today we do, because it's important for us, to feel that closeness, to remember those fun times with Zach and the memories that we had with him. And we talk about him all the time.
Right.
There'll be things that come up and we'll say, hey, do you remember when Zach did this? Or, hey, they were avid hunters, and right now is hunting season in Iowa. And, they talked about going hunting every year for my son Miles's birthday. And Zach was always a part of that, so it's just constantly bringing up. So many people try to stifle those memories because they're so painful. But what I'm trying to tell you is there's joy. The joy in remembering them is coping and is healing. And I think people have to not be afraid. It can be painful, but it's so much joy, so much, your heart feels lighter because you're not forgetting. And you know what? Sharing your story, if you can help another family, if you can save, you see signs of another person going through, what you or your loved one went through, don't be afraid to talk about it. And I think people will be grateful for you. I know Zach, one of his coping skills was writing down gratitudes every day, things that he was grateful for.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and yeah. And, I read some of those, and it, made my heart sing. He had a kind heart. He truly loved people. And I think that's the reason he finally decided, since there really wasn't what he thought was a quality of life, that if he could give another person a better life, it was more important to him. That was his purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that, people that lose a child to suicide, it's not that they wanted to necessarily leave you, it was just that they simply couldn't cope anymore.
Right.
There's nothing that you could have done to most likely change it. Unfortunately, a lot of times when they make those decisions, it's really irrationally, at the moment. If they'd have had another moment, they probably wouldn't have. But, those are things we can't control and we'll never be able to control. But, I think, again, is if you see signs, if you see things, is not being afraid to engage. Because I think Zach would have much rather not had me get engaged as much as I did. But I was not, I did everything I could.
He didn't want to hurt mom. That's the way I am. It's like, we almost want to keep it all inside. And if you ask me, hey, Zach, how am I feeling? And he tells you this all the time. It's venting, it's healthy, but at the same time as, you're a mom. I don't want to hurt my mom. You can't change it. So it's that's where I think therapy comes in very healthy, because you can have something that's not connected. I think it's a very good coping skill.
I think you have to, Zach didn't want to hurt us. Zach had, a big life ahead of him, and he had plans, and yet, at some point he was at his breaking point, and that was that. And yeah, you want to be angry at him, and yeah, you're mad for a while, but in the end, you have to realize they were at a position, at a point that there was not, that probably no one could help. There was, they got to a point because they didn't ask for help soon enough. And they were struggling, and it happens, and you can't beat yourself up for that. You can't blame yourself. You want to, but you can't. And there's no reason for you to, there's reasons behind the psychology behind all of this that even is more complicated, and another podcast all by itself, that for why people take their life, or why they do somewhat crazy things after they lose a loved one. Some say, that they went off the deep end. Not really. They just didn't get help to help them cope. They didn't get the right tools to help them deal with the situation, and everybody's going to be different. As far as, finding your purpose, I've sat down with a lot of moms who have lost their sons. Most of them were sons. And one particular situation, actually the last several, they didn't have a chance to do an autopsy on their brains.
Are they all coming to you from the CTE realm, or are they because of your admission? Like I get opened up.
Yeah, I think I get it twofold. Many of them had a lot of concussions prior to them taking their lives, and then there are some that are just kind of dumbfounded. They've lost their son and they just don't know what to do. So you kind of get them in from both sides, and it's hard for those that don't know. I mean, Zach knew. I had no doubts he had CTE when we got the autopsy results. I already knew. So it was no surprise. It had been a bigger surprise if they'd have said no. But that if it was, it was.
But even if you didn't have CTE, you still had the symptoms of the TBI, so that's still, he's still suffering more than anybody can imagine unless you're in his shoes.
Right.
So
so many of the moms tell me stories that are very similar to Zach's, and they just don't quite understand it. And, I just said, listen, what you have to realize, no matter the situation, they were not healthy. It was the disease. And, CTE is a disease. Mental health is a disease of its own. Mm-hmm. And it's not that they want to hurt you. It's the disease. It's the mental health side of it that really ends up taking them. And you can't beat yourself up for that because you can't control it. I think that a lot of people through over time, and time does heal. It's still hard. I still have bad days, not gonna lie. But I'm human. And when I have those hard, bad days, then I go back to my coping, right? I go through and I realize I give myself a break. Today's my day. I don't have any desire to lay in bed all day. I've never been wanted to do that, but I may not maybe necessarily be as sharp, and I just have to realize I'm not on my game. It's fine. Tomorrow's a better day.
And I think a lot of parents should hold on to that because, again, for me, feeling guilty or about if knowing what the consequence that comes to with others who love you when you do take that exit strategy, that there's going to be that collateral damages that you live with that. And I think not that you should dwell on it. And I don't know if I got to be careful that I'm not speaking for anybody, but is that when you feel sad and you said you need to take a little time for yourself, that just proves that you how much you love that person. That's not something you should feel guilty about. And that's there. If you didn't feel any emotion, like we have people die on the news all the time and it's not affecting me because I don't know that person. Now I've never met Zach. I'm connected to Zach through your campaign, and he'll be in my prayers and my thoughts for the rest of my life, and that's all because of you and your family and your campaign. And again, it's a healing tool for you, but it's also a healing tool for me. Thankfully, you took my call because I'm sure you're so busy, and we're helping other people. And I really believe in this. So otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I have a good method to my madness, is what I call it. So.
Well, you know what? You're doing a wonderful job. You knowing so many things. I know it's difficult for you as well, but the great news is you've got people around you who can help you. Through some of your worst days, and you are also wise enough to know some of the symptoms and when you might need a little extra help too. Yeah. And I think there's is the awareness side of this thing. Zach wanted us to prevent this whole thing. And that's the only way, right now that our foundation believes we can, is to prevent another family, because there's, a lot of research has got to still happen. We're in the infancy of research, if that makes any sense. We know it occurs. We know how it occurs. We know what it looks like in the brain. We know a lot more than we did when I started down this path. But I think one thing is prevention. And one of the things that Zach had alluded to is we need to figure out a way that they can play safe and to protect our athletes. And so one of the research projects that our foundation is a saliva sampling where we could detect the unhealthy enzymes and proteins when you have a concussion that are released up in your brain. And if there's a way that we could measure those and determine which ones are the really bad ones that are causing these really bad things to happen to your brain long term. We know that tau protein is one of the real bad guys, that can cause a lot of damage in the brain, but we also know there's some other ones out there. And we were in the midst of a research project where we collect saliva samples from athletes. We have several local football teams, several local soccer teams, and we collected baseline samples of their saliva to figure out kind of what their normal protein levels and enzyme levels are. And then we took additional saliva samples when they had a concussion. And then we also had a subgroup of just normal athletes who didn't necessarily have a concussion, but we wanted to see what was happening just from subconcussive hits in their brains. Was there any elevations and whatnot? And what's eye-opening is one, we do believe that we can use saliva as a means to capture what's going on actually in the brain, which two then would allow us to figure out the appropriate amount of time per individual or by individual instead of just based on symptoms and number of weeks that they've sat out. What we found out, which is kind of amazing, is that what we thought is true, not all athletes are the same. So a couple of different concussions I'll tell you about. One gentleman, concussion, his enzyme spiked, and we watched him. And for him to actually get back to his baseline, it took 6 weeks.
Wow.
For the other athlete that we were watching, same team, it only took 2 weeks for him to get back to his normal baseline enzyme levels. So what that tells you is this: none of us are the same. We don't know if there were prior concussions that weren't diagnosed in the one brain and not the other, or if it was from multiple subconcussive hits based on the position they played or other activities prior to playing the sport. There's just a lot of variables there, but clearly one of the brains had more damage, and it took his brain a lot longer to heal. Now, you get them back down to the end, and the damaging enzymes and the inflammation, they're the ones that cause the inflammation out of the brain. So it's functioning normally. People can continue to do the stuff that they want to do, right?
Well, that was my question was, so is your foundation doing this research? Are you partnering up with someone else?
Yeah. So we did the outreach, the grassroots outreach. We do collecting all the saliva samples ourselves. And then we working with Boston University Lab, which send the samples out.
You work with Dr. McKay?
Not McKay. I said Boston. It's Harvard University.
Harvard.
Sorry. I had it on the brain.
Harvard. It is in Boston, though. It's all right.
Yeah. Any rate, and they were running our saliva samples through a special machine, which can dial the detection down to a nanomilli, whatever. It's a fascinating world that science is. And so what that means is that, yes, we were probably on the right track, but then COVID hit, and not a good time to be collecting somebody's saliva.
Yeah, not only that too, it's then we get bumped aside because we're not the sexiest cause out there, so
yeah, well, yeah, you do get tossed to the side, but we were not. We were actually making really good progress, and we're hoping to get back to it once we can start gathering saliva safely again, because the worst case is I don't want to accidentally infect myself or anybody else on our team, or any of the other collectors, but mostly I don't want to infect an entire football team or soccer team accidentally, because we don't know enough about COVID right now. That's a pandemic. And so just not a very good time. So we're hoping to pick that back up in the future. We may be partnering with some other, scientific labs and things like that to make it happen. And the progress we made was good and it was promising. And we will go back to it as soon as we possibly can. So the other thing we do is a lot of awareness, and we've
I just wanted, because that's amazing, because I'm constantly searching for that. I mean, that's so, you can get a little kid in Pop Warner to give you saliva, right? But if you have to put them in, like for me to go into the MRI, I'm claustrophobic. It's very scary for me,
and it's very expensive.
And it's very
that's very expensive.
Back of the cost. So you're onto something that's a brilliant idea. I hope it works. But if I understand it correctly, when you said you took a baseline of one gentleman that had a concussion at 6 weeks and another gentleman that had a concussion and it was at 2 weeks, does that mean if this science or this technology works out, then that would be the proof to give you clearance that would make you healthier to regain the sport of choice?
Right. So you can return to learn, you can return to work, you can return to play.
So now I'm not going to your cast.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating, actually, when you think about it in the broad term. And it's in real time. So we can essentially, the technology is out there. We could do it on the sidelines and we'd be able to test elevation. But what we're really finding out is the elevation doesn't occur necessarily. It's there, but you can't detect it until like second day. So, which is fine. It's still pretty darn fast. And then by having their baseline data, you're going to know kind of where their normal is. And you're going to be able to, watch them and treat them properly. What we also found that was fascinating is that right now they're like, if you're symptom free for X amount of time, and blah, 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 you can go back to, you pass your concussion test, you can go back in. What we found out is most of these gentlemen were symptom free well before the enzymes in their brain came down.
Wow.
Which means that symptoms should not be the driving factor of when somebody can return to learn or play.
Wow, that is absolutely brilliant. I would love for you, if again, the olive branch is there, we would love to support you anyway. We have to take baby steps because there's so many things that we're trying to do and we're not as big as you, and we have to pick and choose. But that's something that is a brilliant concept, and I'd be all behind it to support any way I can.
And really what we're saying is let's just prevent it. Let's just prevent it so that we don't have another Zach and the family doesn't have to, go through everything that we did. And that's the only way we really know how to prevent.
But I've been doing a tremendous, through my network, which is pretty extensive. I've been doing a lot of research, and this is the first time I've heard of that. So except I read it in the article, people, right?
We're doing our best to try to follow and I guess honor Zach's wishes, but mostly just to stop it. Just stop CTE. There'll still be, ones that one-offs or whatever, but we've just got so many now. And there are so many. In fact, I just had a Zach reach out to me who had read Zach's story, and he just thanked me. He said, Zach was right. Keeping it all in and not talking to people is one of the worst things you can do. It's so much better to have a support, your family, your friends, to let them in on how you're feeling and some of your symptoms, because that support means the world. And I think, I think of you, Paolo, you've got good support, right? And that's so critical in helping you navigate through all of this.
Well, if you don't ask for help, when we can't, how are you supposed to get it, right? So we have to ask for help, no matter how much our ego is there or whatever, we can't keep it in, and there's strength in numbers. So I'm going to let you close out. If you had any other things that you think, that we covered a lot, and you gave me so much of your time. So thank you so much. It was more than I know you anticipated for, but really, I think this will help a lot of people. And, I'd like to continue our relationship because there's strength in numbers. And if there's anything you could think, because I have a different strategy is I set my goals and try to meet my goals. So I would love to be, if I was like 20 years younger and I knew I was healthy, I would shoot for your goals to cure the disease. So right now I'm just trying to help the people. You like that one? Good. Put a smile on your face. That's a good way to close out. But I want to just help the kids out. Like if you said you had another Zach reach out to you, those are the kids that I would love to talk to, or even men. Like I said, most of them are either former, and they all think it's football players. And again, I'm trying to get away from that stigma. If some of the vets reach out to it, I could have a dialogue and maybe can reduce some of their stress levels and say, this is how I get through. It might not work for you, speak my point of it, but if you connect with somebody, that's kind of our mission. And so anything we could do to support you. And I encourage anybody with our podcast, again, this is not, we're in it to help other people. So this is not, I find out with some not-for-profits, unfortunately, they're very, protective of their own mission, and they don't want to share, where I'm like, I don't understand that methodology. Is that if we're all on the same cause to help people, it's not a business. I'm not going to Starbucks in Europe, a coffee place across the street for us. We're all out there to help people. So I really appreciate you spending this time with us. My prayers are with you and your family, and our thoughts, and we can't thank you enough. And reach out to us anytime. Hopefully you won't be a stranger now. You'll be part of our family.
I am not a stranger. I commend you, Paolo, for what you're doing. You are helping so many people. I've read so much of your work. You're doing great things. And you're an older Zach, right?
He was better looking.
Now I'm saying a word. And I think that, the work that we're doing is really important in a lot of different ways. And people should not be afraid to reach out, ask the questions. I'll tell you the truth. You may not like all the truth, but I'm not going to give you the truth without either a solution or a way to work through what you're going through, because I would never do that to someone. Don't be afraid to realize that bad things happen to good people, and not understanding it can kill you. There are things in our lives that we'll never understand. And it's okay. We don't have to know it all. What's important is that you take care of yourself enough, love yourself enough to give yourself that gift, whatever the day of the week it is, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's compassion. I need a day off. I need a mental day, which literally sometimes you do because you really don't want to talk to one more person. It's okay. But I will also want to say it's not okay to make every day that way. And it's more important for you to get the right help, the right people in your life so that you have more better days than not.
Beautiful advice. And please, so everybody, this is a non-for-profit, and I would not have CTE Hope on if I didn't believe in what there was and the venting and their ethics and quality. So please reach out to their website and make a donation, because through non-for-profits, that's how the Easter family could help grow and the legacy of Zach. So thank you so much. And please give your family a hug for me and tell them this went well. And we'll let you know when we post it. And we'll get this all out there, and we'll spread it out to anybody else. So again, thank you so much. It's been really amazing.
Yeah, and Alexander, thank you too for your help as well.
Do you want to say goodbye real quick?
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. I hope it will resonate with people.
It will. Thank you, man.
Resonate
All
with
right, have a nice evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Paolo's podcast. This concludes all 3 parts with special guest speaker Brenda Easter. Make sure to tune in next week, December 16th, with our new guest speaker, Dr. Everson. We strongly encourage you to check out our company website, Concussions, Pain, Mental Health Awareness at cpmha.com, where you can access free resources for coping skills and strategies you may find useful. We also encourage viewers to consider donating to our nonprofit, which helps keeps our mission alive, going strong, and help fund future projects. You can donate through our website at, again, cpmha.com. And remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell in order to receive notifications each time we post a new podcast. Thank you.